there's also a very military aspect to this, and anything that has military aspects is now a battle between China and America. And of course, Starlink has been used in Ukraine by the Ukrainians on the front lines to keep communications open, even when Russia or just the situation of war makes it difficult otherwise. And China is very worried that the same might be the case in a war over Taiwan.
Now, China and Russia have launched a concerted pushback against Elon Musk's Starlink satellite network, accusing it of endangering spacecraft and helping criminals, drug smugglers and terror groups. Both Russia and China are really unhappy about it. They've been backed up by allies Cuba and Iran. They want curbs on the network. Let's speak now to Richard Spencer, China correspondent for The Times. He's been looking into this. Morning, Richard.
Good morning.
So what are the concerns with Starlink from a Chinese and Russian perspective?
I mean, essentially, it's just the continuing fear of free speech, I suppose, is what it comes down to in China. The free access to information, which is obviously really one of the big divides now in the world and between the West and between China. China restricts the internet. It restricts all publications. Everything has to be state controlled and is censored. The internet was a challenge to that when it started becoming sort of commonly used in China 20, 30 years ago, as elsewhere. And they worked very hard to institute this firewall around the Western internet and restrict users only to their own internet, if you like. Starlink provides a challenge to that because it's satellite controlled. You can log on from anywhere. Starlink, therefore, is banned. You can't sort of get one of the Starlink receivers in China, as in other countries, but they are smuggled in to many countries around the world. And like everything with the internet, it has bad sides and good sides. I mean, we believe in freedom, but we're also somewhat concerned about the use of the internet and the dark web for criminality. China has a much broader view of criminality, so that's the excuse. There's also a very military aspect to this, and anything that has military aspects is now a battle between China and America. And of course, Starlink has been used in Ukraine by the Ukrainians on the front lines to keep communications open, even when Russia or just the situation of war makes it difficult otherwise. And China is very worried that the same might be the case in a war over Taiwan. So there are numerous reasons for China to fear the internet and to fear Starlink.
How big is Starlink? I mean, we know, I think it was very recently, British Airways announcing that Starlink will be able to be used on planes. There does feel like there is a concerted growth and dominance, and you just wonder if there is some justified concern from the Russians and the Chinese.
Well, that's a very interesting question about Starlink. I mean, I'm not the tech expert, but there must be a tipping point. I mean, there are now, I think, around 10,000 Starlink satellites, so it has, very widespread coverage. Of course, in places like Britain, we have good domestic internet. We perhaps don't need it so much, but there are parts of the world where it's very useful, where internet coverage isn't good. So that's and if you think the internet's a good thing, then Starlink is a good thing. I mean, if everyone, there's no reason why remote parts of, say, Africa or countries that don't allow free access to the internet shouldn't have free internet the same as we do. I mean, free in the ideological sense, not money sense. If we think we should have free, uncensored internet access, why not everyone else?
Is China trying to sort of compete? I mean, you've outlined obviously why it doesn't want free internet access for people, but is it trying to compete against this? I mean, if you're thinking particularly in light of kind of the space race and where China is in relation to the US on that.
For sure. This what they call Starlink depends on something they call low Earth orbit satellites. So this network of of satellites in relatively low orbit around the Earth. It's not the only one. Amazon has its own version. There's a a France-based company, Eutelsat communications company, is providing its own network inside Europe, and China is planning its own system called Chang'e. As often, sometimes China is just trying to use these means to cover up the fact it's a bit behind the game on this. What is interesting about this at another level is the way that these private companies are interacting with what China thinks of as state-led services. I mean, these are private companies, and China, tends to get a bit behind the game because it relies on state provision for so much of these big public services and indeed military provision. So it's a bit slower off the mark.
You mentioned the use of Starlink to help the Ukrainians during the Ukrainian war against Russia. Clearly, China have these concerns as well about if there were to be any military action in Taiwan. Is it possible for the Chinese to block Starlink, for example?
Well, so that's another big question that the Chinese are trying to game this out. I mean, they game a lot of things out about a potential war over Taiwan. It's something they do very well and look at very closely. According to two papers, which were rather surprising, I thought, published in a couple of science journals this year in China, their scientists have been gaming out how you could block Starlink satellites by using jammers, but the Starlink coverage is already so good. They worked out you'll need between 1,000 and 2,000 sort of drone-based jamming operations just to block coverage over Taiwan itself, which is pretty striking when you think about it.
Absolutely. Richard, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much. That's Richard Spencer, the China correspondent for The Times. And you can read his piece on this in The Times today with your digital subscription at thetimes.com.